Welcome to Community Insight. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Rodney Coles. We are bringing information to the community, a lot of information to us to know what's happening in our community. Today we have our planning manager, our director of our planning manager, Mr. James. Mr. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Reverend. I enjoy always spending time with you and talking about some of the community items out there that are facing our citizens.
Amen. Mr. James, I know there's a lot of information. I'm going to try to get it all at you at one time. I want to go backwards before we go forward. I'd like to speak a little bit about Floyd in 1999, and you was here with 1999. I'm still a rookie trying to learn some of the stuff that happened in 99. What happened in 99 that you did with Floyd? And I'd like to speak a little bit about Matthews.
Okay. Certainly, our flood event in 1999 was much more severe here in Pitt County than Hurricane Matthew was. But again, we still had a lot of people that were impacted with Hurricane Matthew. But I will say what we did accomplish with Hurricane Floyd recovery efforts lessened the impacts here. Our hazard mitigation program, specifically our buyout program, we have well over 100 properties in the unincorporated part of the county. The city had about as many that were bought out at that time, and had they not been bought out then, they would have been seriously impacted during Hurricane Matthew. So that's a success story coming out of Hurricane Floyd.
Okay. And so now we in Matthews. When Matthews we was impact, but not as heavy in 1999, which we got hit in 2016. So in October, what took place here in DePitt County?
Right. Again, almost two different flood events. We had the flash flood that started early that evening. We had major portions of the city that were impassable. We were in the Emergency Operations Center with the county. A lot of our time was spent just trying to direct people how to get to the hospital, which routes were open, which routes weren't. If there were accidents, if there were people experiencing flooding during the flash flood event, we were trying to assist them. Certainly after that point, and then when the riverine flooding, when the Neuse Rivers and the Tar Rivers started to crest maybe a week or so afterwards, that was a whole another event. Certainly that's when, for example, the town of Grifton was seriously impacted.
So in 2016, there was the flash warnings more as trying to get folks' safety into a place. And it's some questions that I have some answers to. There is a emergency program system set up in Pitt County. Is there a list where folks can look at to go to if they was unable to get anyone at that time? Like, there's a list they can have in advance, having a kind of idea, well, listen, if it's a flood zone, because one of the things my wife always do when we go to a mall, she said, well, listen, just in case we get lost, you understand, and sometimes, I don't know about you, my cell phone doesn't work as often as good, and they call it smart. I think one thing was smart, they got my money, but the point was, she said, let's make a landmark so we know we'll meet back here just in case. Is there a way that folks can get a kind of a map of saying, well, I'm in zone 1 or zone 2, and this is the areas I need to be looking at?
Yeah, people really need to be aware of where the floodplain areas are in the county. That information is readily available online at the county website, online parcel information system, OPUS, that people can easily click on their property, bring up a layer that shows the 100-year floodplain, and they can be educated right there on the spot. But if they can't do that, certainly folks with the county, specifically Brian Jones, our certified floodplain manager with the county, can assist folks. There's also another person with the city of Greenville, likewise, that can assist anybody if they've got questions about whether their property is impacted. And it might not just be their property. It may be the road that they take access off could become impassable. So you have to look at it not just your personal property, but if I needed to evacuate, how can I get to a safe place?
And that's very important. We also have the Red Cross. I know that they have certain shelters that they're working with churches with. I've been working with Miss Kathy Jones and them to try to get some areas and working with church. I just think that St. Paul Episcopal, he mentioned at the meeting we just recently had that they've been approved and they're already set up. We know about St. James and other churches that want to get more involved in that, on having a place for that. And that's something they need to get up with the Red Cross on having a church in a facility, because they got to be inspected and the I's got to be dotted and the T's must be crossed.
That's
on that
correct. There's still a need for additional, these are more the temporary shelters. The larger shelters, especially long-term, more than likely our school sites are going to fit that mold, what we need in cases like that. But if there's a fire and we just need a staging area in a particular area of the county, if there are some churches that might want to participate in that program, being a temporary shelter, certainly they can contact also to kind of start the process, the Pitt County Emergency Services Office.
Good. Who will they need to contact, and would you have that contact number with you offhand, or maybe we could get back to them?
I would say just dial 902-3950, and that will put you into the Emergency Services Department, and they can direct you to the right place at that time.
So if you listen to this broadcast, you understand as a church, you could get involved with the Emergency Assistance Program by dialing that number there and contacting them if you want to be more involved into that area. And I know that's something that we'll be working a little bit more with Red Cross, with the Disaster Recovery Group, and getting them more involved and having a link where they can have a listen on that, because we do have that long-term recovery group. We thank you for all the things you're doing to make it be successful here, because in 1999, I know you didn't have one, but 2016, I think you got some new blood.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's like, when these things happen, it's like catching a flat. I don't want to change my tire, but as long as I know I got a spare, I'm okay. You know what I'm saying? I want to mention a little bit in October. I know that when everything went, it was just like, it's like a shock. Everything happened so fast. Matthew came in. We didn't realize we were going to be getting hit. We have understanding that the county had to get a facility. Stuff need to go there. What was your thoughts on all that was happening in 2016 October?
Well, having lived through Hurricane Floyd, I would say we were better prepared. But you can never fully prepare for these emergency situations. I think our new emergency manager, the services manager that had just taken the office a month or two in advance of the storm, did a yeoman's job in getting people where they needed to be, getting the resources here from other places. And, people were donating. We've got some mighty good folks here in the community. So many donations. In fact, we had some areas where people were staged, and we had certain warehouses where we were stockpiling some of the goods that were necessary. So I would say this time through, better prepared. A lot of activities going on, certainly in the Emergency Operations Center. Just in the height of the storm, the rescue and all that, but soon thereafter moving into the recovery phase.
You just said something about the donations. Now, we know that the county had to use buildings, and not saying the county don't have a whole lot of buildings to be using. In an event of someone looking at this broadcast, if there was, I guess, a group or church over, we have areas that north of the river, it's like if we only had one Food Lion and one Walmart, we'll be in trouble. We really would be in trouble. I would never get that milk for my coffee. If we only had one, that would mess us all up. And we know we got a couple Food Lions, we got a couple Walmarts, leave the small ones and the big ones. But if there was someone looking at this broadcast and say, well, listen, I might be in Griffith. Like, we know about I think it's called the Griffith Men's. Is that the Griffith Men's with Bill? I don't know exactly the name of his group over there.
Grifton Mission Ministries.
Okay. He's over there. There's another area we have across the river. We have Chanel in her area there. That's another area. We got Bethel. You got Stokes. in any other areas, which is part of the Pitt County, it would be good if we could have other locations. And if you're listening at this broadcast, if you may have an area, say, listen, I can have this prepared for the next time and have this open area, which they probably need to get with the emergency team to talk with them and say, we have this space, and to kind of line things up for, let's say that we don't want another one, but if one comes, be prepared. I don't want a flat. I got a nail in my car now. I'm gonna take to the tire guy. See the little temperature said low air. I said okay, but we don't want that to happen. That'd be something that the county might be looking to work with, along with probably the long-term recovery group.
Pretty much same situation as with the churches here locally that may want to serve as a temporary shelter site. Anyone that has whatever resources that they might be able to donate or have available, certainly they could coordinate through our Emergency Services Department, 902-3950, if you've got items, if you've got resources, warehouses, whatever that might be available.
Okay. In 2017, I think in 16 you did one. You had a few community forums. Could you elaborate a little bit on what was the forums about, to let the community know we had it, it was in the paper, and what was it about?
Sure. The county and the city of Greenville collaborated on a couple of different information sessions. The first one was back in February to get people prepared for the buyout program. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, known locally as the buyout program, was very successful, as I mentioned, back with Hurricane Floyd. And this time the information was made available to applications, and we had close to 75 people show up to make application for those programs. Following that, a couple of months later, we had a couple of information sessions about the repair program. Again, long list of eligibility requirements for both the buyout and the repair programs, and we're going to have some crossover. People that didn't qualify for the buyout program, we just were informed by the state a couple of weeks ago who made the cut, who didn't. About 15% of the folks that applied were approved, so that means 85 were disqualified. More than likely, some of those people will also be interested now in the repair program. So there are going to be some crossover between these particular programs, and that's why we had the information sessions, giving folks a little bit better idea of what's available, whether they might meet some of those initial criteria, and also know where they can go to get some assistance in helping put the application form together.
Because so right now we're at the buyout process now, and as you mentioned, I know at one of the meetings, is the buyout now that may be where they may be more qualified repairs. Do you run into folks that say, I just won't want my house no more? It's almost like probably a car dealership probably watching this as well that sells car. Or my car's not running, I want a new car because maybe the compressor went, Do you run into those type of issues where folks say, well, I was flooded out so many times, but you say, well, this house could be repaired? I mean, how would be something like that you will handle?
Ideally, we're trying to get people out of harm's way long term. That's where the buyout program has been instrumental here in our community in removing those 100-some households that we assisted during Hurricane Floyd, and they didn't have to be rescued this time through. Same thing here. If they had some stricter criteria this time for the buyout program, we know we're only going to get a certain number approved. But if people were not qualified and they are interested in staying in their homes, the repair program is the next best option. There may be some ways of actually assisting them, so if their heating and air conditioning unit, for example, was under the house previously, if one's reinstalled, it may need to be elevated some. It may need to be so the ductwork runs through the attic versus underneath the home. So there are ways even to make the homes more flood-proof, even through the repair program.
Let me ask a question here. I hope it's not a tricky one. what is the qualification of the buyout?
Well, stricter criteria this time, the ones that we have seen that were approved were displaced. Again, that was one of the major issues that the state felt was imperative. We've got people that are displaced, that are basically homeless. We want to help them first. Those applications were expedited, and in turn, if you were displaced, they got top priority. That was one thing. The home being in the 100-year floodplain, had it been impacted by another flood at some other time, a lot of different criteria went into considering who was approved and who wasn't.
And you may have, and this is where I said it won't be a tricky question. You may have some folks who may be renting a house. Some landlord may not be here or may be here, the deeds in their names. If I'm a renter of a house, and that means there's nothing I can do because that house is Henry's house. Yeah, say almost Harry Hinton. I didn't mean to put that up there, but house. So that means that I won't be qualified for that. That way we had to look for the landlord, the owner, and what him or she may wants to do.
Yeah, and typically, again, one of the main criteria was it had to be owner occupied. So it is, and it could be someone that might have a life estate or something of that sort, but that property has to be occupied by the person that owns it. So that was one of the first things to determine ownership, and those were some of the first cuts, I'd say, in the people that had applied to see whether they qualify or not.
And if they was the owner of the house occupied, they had to be the one that lives there. And so I'm gonna ask some questions. Do they have to make sure that they taxes and everything's paid up? Do any of that falls in the line? Or,
Not necessarily for the buyout program, but certainly for the repair program. That is one of the stipulations that they have to be current on their property taxes. And that is something in general that local governments require. We have here in Pitt County for many years. For this type of assistance, we need to ensure that the property taxes, state and local, are paid up.
And that's something part of maybe the long-term recovery group, if they have property taxes, something that they can help with to get their taxes up so they could be qualified for.
That is certainly a possibility, and that's why we like this partnership with the long-term recovery group, in that there may be just some small items, whether it be getting people current on their taxes, whether it's something that maybe we're not able to assist them with. We do have a maximum limit of funding that we can put into repair program activities. So in turn, there may be some opportunities to partner with your group again in that respect. On the flip side, there's a minimum threshold. So if folks didn't have at least $5,000 worth of damage, our program is not, they're not eligible for our program. We'll be making some referrals to your group in turn. So I think that's the good partnership here, in making sure whatever resources are available, we're trying to get our folks back whole where they were prior to the flood.
Right. For those maybe listening to the broadcast, you say, well, what are he talking about yours? It's just to clarify, James is understand we here in Pitt County is called the DRP Disaster Recovery for Pitt County, and that is a website. I'll give that afterwards. But that is a disaster long-term group we have here, and we want to thank. There've been a lot of folks who've been a lot of sweat, a lot of hard work. I may forget some name, but I must put out Margaret Dixon, been a very strong advocate with this. I want to thank Jim Caesar from United Way. United Way is a part of that. So if you want to make any kind of donation, please help us. Please send it to United Way underneath disaster recovery. I want to bring out Jim Cox, Jim Hooker. I want to bring Mary Smith. I know I'm going to leave some out, John Leonard. And there's a lot of us, Red Cross, the Salvation Army is a part of this, and Mobile Crisis. All these folks, as well as the Legal Aid. is about we have certain amount of funds that we was awarded already. It was in the paper recently about $82,000 that we have. So if your house or something like that going through, there's a case manager, there's a procedure, but we may be able to help with taxes and small things, as Mr. James just mentioned. If your home is not more than $5,000, that's when you tap on our shoulders. And this group that we are part of, that is what we have now in Pitt County. And Mr. J's been so helpful in helping us in every step of the way and things. And we also still need money to help in this area. So for those who are looking at the broadcast and what are they talking about, the website for that is drp2016.org. I'll repeat it slowly. drp2016.org. So that is the recovery group we have in Pitt County here. So you can look at that information. And as we're getting back into speak about, let's speak a little bit about the repairs in there. So there's a buyout process requirement. What is the repair requirement?
Okay. Once we move into the repair programs, this is established through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, and it is not unlike what we administer for our regular community development repair programs. There are income eligibility requirements. Again, owner occupied. We've got to ensure that the folks that are living there own the property. And there's several others, but those are the two main criteria that we start out with. If they don't meet that low moderate income threshold, they're automatically out. Also, in this case, if they qualified for a small business loan after the flood, that disqualifies them for the program. So there are a number of check items. That's kind of what we went through at our information sessions to kind of give people just a quick look at some of those requirements. But most of them are vetted through the application review process. Our applications are online, or they can contact our office at 902-3250, receive an application if they believe that they might be qualified for this program. And that's where just this week we'll be sending out letters to let the folks know that we're not eligible for the buyout program, that also that the repair program may be an option for them. And in turn, we've already got applications in and reviewed and approved for 16 folks for the repair program. I have a feeling we'll see more coming over from now the buyout program that were not deemed eligible.
Just to say this here as well, there may be folks who's not qualified for the buyout or for the repairs, and that's why you have a long-term recovery group is here, and that's why we seeking donations and have money to help. And so you do need to get online. I don't have the number to the service you need to call online, but it's on the website. But I do want to say, go to the website, drp2016.org, and take a look on that information so we get the information to get someone to help you, whether you've been not qualified for none of this program right now. You said, no one leaving you out there, it's out here for you to get help on our website. I want to mention just a little bit regarding of those folks that I know that may not be qualified for any of that. And what do you suggest, other than going to the recovery group, what they can do at this time here? Because I know that some folks probably looking at this broadcast and they're saying, well, I'm not qualified this. I don't own the house. I'm just a tenant, and I'm flooded completely out in our community. And sometimes folks look at this here. Well, I pay taxes. Mine could go in a different direction. What would you say to them that came to you into those areas there?
Well, I realize we're about a year now, it's hard to believe, away from the flood, and programs are still being established. The emergency services director and myself will be going to Raleigh next week to hear about yet another program, community development block grant program, that's also going to be eligible for folks here in the community. We know we weren't one of the hardest hit communities this time. We're fortunate not to be. And the bulk of that money will be going to those 4 hardest hit counties, and rightfully so. But there will be some money here. What our hope and what our wish is, and what we'll be going to talk with the state officials about, is that we need a replacement program. We've got repair, we've got buyout, what we've got in between, especially with some of these mobile units, they're just not repairable. And in turn, we need funding for replacement units. We had great success after Hurricane Floyd with a similar program. That's a component we're missing right now. But for tenants and so forth, we do have, if there is a problem where they become homeless, our office also runs a homeless prevention program that can assist folks with rental assistance, possibly back utilities. So if that's some issues, again, our office is involved in that program. Some of the other programs probably haven't been fully vetted yet. So my best suggestion is, if you live out in the county or the smaller 9 municipalities outside of Greenville, stay in contact with our office. If you're within the city of Greenville, likewise, stay in contact with the city of Greenville's Community Development Department.
Mr. James, I want to tell you thank you for being on this broadcast. I would say we probably knew each other on back and forth. I would say about a good 12 years I've been here.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, Queen Matthew, we spent more time together than the whole time I've been down here. Y'all listening to the broadcast. We thank you for being on our show, James. Continue having a blessed day. Thank you.